All right. Welcome to the For My Dogs podcast. Johnny's dogs let everybody down this weekend,
Oh my
but
gosh.
we'll get into that in a second.
That is not how I was.
I got my dog Johnny here with me, and a good friend of mine, Matt Johnson, is joining us for today's podcast. He is also a dog, not a Georgia Bulldog, but like a dog in real life. And we're here to talk about what we talk about every week on the podcast, which is we exist to help men become the best version of themselves and to highlight that we can't do that alone. And so we're here to encourage men to prioritize and invest in deep friendships that will help them be who they were created to be. And so if you enjoy the content, if it adds value to your life, would you please just hit the subscribe, follow button? It's free to you, and it helps us and it helps men find this podcast and benefit from it. And so, yeah, that's a way you can help us, and that's a way you can be a part of our mission and vision and change somebody's life, hopefully. So please take the time to do that. But without further ado, we had a lot of playoff football happen this weekend. Johnny, how are you feeling, sir?
I'm not feeling good after that intro. I'll say that. You did not prepare me at all, but
I mean, you just let the whole SEC down, so, you know.
Okay. The very first drive, I texted my dad and I said we lost. And I get to because
the first drive.
The first drive, I said the O-line never left the hotel. Like, they just let the defense rush into them. O-line sucked. So, fire O-line coach. Our receivers dropped balls. I mean, Gunnar Stockton was hitting them in the chest, and it was bouncing off of them, okay? And Gunnar Stockton didn't have an incredible game, but that was his first game he ever started, you know? Like, he's like, give the kid a break. I think I was very impressed with him on that. But, I mean, I follow a lot of UGA fans, and they're already saying, fire Kirby, fire Kirby.
Are you serious?
I was like, pump the brakes, okay? Like, this Kirby's smart.
College football fans, man.
Oh, they're insane. So, listen, Notre Dame, I mean, I hate to say this, heck of a team. But I will say, I'm not trying to talk a sore loser, we did beat ourselves up a ton. Like, that was an awful game for Georgia. But every team that made it to the quarterfinals waited like 26 days to play. And all those 4 teams lost. So I'm not blaming it on that. However, 26 days is a big gap to play. And so maybe the committee next time should rearrange that. I don't know what y'all's thoughts are on that, but like, that definitely did not help us out at all.
Yeah, what do you think about the games this weekend, Matt?
Man, well, I very much so wasn't as focused on the offensive line for Stockton as much as I was like, he looks like a bit of a deer in headlights. Cannon. Has an absolute
cannon.
And right. I told Bethany, because she's our football fan in the house. I'm much more of a Carson Beck when it comes to I've taken some years to struggle to watch it again.
Oh, really?
But yeah.
And just so for our listeners who don't know you, Matt, would you explain why that is?
Yeah. So I got to play 4 years, for the first 4 years at UNC Charlotte for the 49ers and played quarterback there until I played Wildcat quarterback, until I played whatever they would call Taysom Hill's job, until I played the right punt wall. So that was where a lot of that. I played football up until I was 23 years old. And but my wife is like obsessed. I mean, she's on college game day, 10 o'clock every Saturday morning. Like, she's there. And I looked at her when we were watching the Georgia game, and I was like, he looks like me the first time I played in any serious situation. And I don't say it like negatively, but I don't say it positively. It looks like,
I understand.
The moment is very much on his shoulders, and he feels it. So
yeah. I don't blame him. I mean, your first starts in a playoff game.
It took like 5 minutes, and then he was looked like he was hitting a pretty good stride. But man, I want Notre Dame or Penn State to take it all. I want every inch of the college football system to feel the weight of transfers, and I want it to just get messed up. I don't want it to make sense anymore because they've decided for it not to make sense.
That's fair. Yeah, it's insane. Well, that's part of me is conflicted, which I'm coming out of the games from this week actually feeling a lot better. because Ohio State did the same thing to the number 1 seed Oregon, even worse than they did to us.
Yeah.
Really?
And so that, I still don't feel great about losing, but I at least feel better than I did, last week this time. And also, I'm conflicted because with the teams left, I don't really love any of them. So I'm like, well, if Ohio State wins, then at least we lost to the champ. But I feel like if Ohio State wins it all, then it's just going to set the precedent that if you spend the money, you're going to win a national championship. And it's just going to get even crazier and even more out of whack with NIL and all that. And so I don't know how to feel about like who I want to win. I've never really liked Notre Dame. I've never really liked Penn State. And Texas, I guess if they won it all, I wouldn't be mad because they're in
not
the SEC now. But they're, to me, in my eyes, they're still a Big 12 team. So it's like hard to welcome them in.
Oh, yeah, but they're not going to make it past Ohio State.
I don't think anybody is
No.
beating Ohio State the way they're playing.
I don't understand Ohio State at all because, like, the regular season, no one was really like, everybody's like, oh yeah, this is their worst year. That's what everyone was saying about Ohio State. And then after Michigan game, they were threatened to fire Ryan Day because how bad he was. And then now all of a sudden they're like calling him the coach of the year or something like that. And I was like, how does that happen? How do you become one of the worst coaches and then now you're everyone is like praising you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw one of the coaches who will win. It'll be their first time winning a national championship. And so
Ryan Day, I'm pretty sure he's not won one, correct?
Yeah, none of the coaches left have ever won one. I think Sarkisian might have been on staff at Alabama when they won one, but he hasn't won one as a head coach. So that'll be interesting. That'll be good for one of them. But I also saw that Sarkisian, apparently the NFL has a lot of interest in him. So
oh, really?
If he, maybe if he finishes on top, he makes the leap to the NFL. Who knows?
And then Matthew McConaughey becomes a new head coach.
That would be awesome.
I might buy a Texas shirt if that happens.
Yeah, that would be so sick.
We are Texas instead of we are Marshall.
Yeah. Oh, dude, if he made, he should make a movie and he should be the head coach. That'd be awesome. But I'm the same way with you, Tucker. Is that like I've never liked Notre Dame at all, and I just like cannot stand them because they're refuse to be in anyone's conference because they're so holier than thou,
Mm-hmm.
And now that they beat Georgia, I'm like, okay, well, I kind of want them to win now because that makes Georgia look better. And like, that's all about. And I was with you as I want Texas to win because I make the SEC look good because the very next morning after we lost, I was like, I shouldn't watch SportsCenter, but I'm going to. And like the first headline says SEC is no longer a powerhouse. I was like, all right, come on. Like right now, SEC is 8-6 in bowl games and Big Ten is 9-5. So we've lost one less game than they have. I do know that, now they have a higher chance of winning the national championship, but I'm like, we're not. Like, I mean, ACC is 2-11. So like, we're a little better. Like, I guess we're in between now, but.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at recruiting class, you look at transfer portal. Most of the talent in college football is in either the Big Ten, the top Big Ten programs, and the top SEC programs. That's just how it is. And top to bottom, they have the most talent in college football. So it's always been between those two conferences. If they want to try and say the SEC's dominance is dead, whatever. I mean, I do think all of the rules have balanced it out a little bit, but we still have history backing us over the past decade or whatever. And we lost the greatest college football coach of all time. So that's going to have an impact on it too.
Yeah, and
Saban's not there anymore.
And hey, Matt, next season, I don't know if you have looked at the schedule yet.
Yes, I have.
Georgia plays UNC Charlotte.
I don't get free tickets for the away games, but Bethany and I are eyeballing that game.
Me too. Me too.
So are we.
Dude, that would be.
We won't meet up.
Listen, I'm excited for us to score a touchdown in the first 2 minutes.
Okay, easy.
Like on that for like the first 2 minutes. You know how it goes.
Yes.
I've been in a situation, and then we lose 30 to 10. But, it's actually respectable. But no, I think anything can happen on any given Saturday. And I grew up an App State fan in the middle of the D1 AA era. Like I was at games in the womb all the way till my senior year of high school. And so I got to witness playoff football at its finest. Like just what you dream about. Only home and aways for the games. The last game is just Chattanooga Choo Choo, and it is a level of excitement that I think, because it's not televised and it's not monetarily valuable to the entire nation, you just don't get the beauty of it. It's yeah. Anyways, that's my context for playoffs. So I'm excited for the playoff to be what it is now.
Yeah.
Because you do get situations like the what was the game the other night that came down to the wire? I mean,
Texas, Arizona State.
like you get the Scatabo situations. Like you get to see that and feel the emotion of it that otherwise in bowl games you're just not going to get it.
That dude is incredible. I mean,
The
I don't think Arizona State is in that game without Scatabo.
He is.
I mean, he threw a touchdown pass, caught like a 40-yard ball. I mean, he had well over 100 yards rushing. I think he had like 90-something yards receiving, and then a touchdown pass to top it all. Like, that's an insane game from a running back.
Yeah.
But I am excited to see how they tweak and make the playoff better year to year. I definitely think there's some things from this year that they'll probably want to tweak and change. However, I heard someone talking about it, and they have to have a unanimous vote if they are to change anything within this like first 2-year window.
Yeah.
And so everybody would have to agree on it. So like the group of 5 team getting a bye and them taking that away or whatever, you may not have the group of 5 people on the committee agree to that, so it may not get changed. But who knows? We'll see what happens in the off season. But we're a podcast that loves football. Matt, you played football, so and I know you outside of just that. We worked together at a church, and I was an intern, and you were on staff there, so I got to know you then. Know your heart, know who you are as a dude and as a dad. And so we wanted to have you on just to share a little bit about your story and just, from your playing days to now, just kind of the lessons you've learned and how you've developed as a man. And so for our listeners, that's why Matt's on here, just so you know. And for those that don't know you, though, and even Johnny just met you for the first time. So would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of give us the rundown on who Matt Johnson is?
Oh, sweet. I'll probably I'll have to share just a little bit of my testimony in that. But I grew up in Catawba County, just outside of Charlotte. Ended up, for the football fans in there, I mean, Maiden High School is a famous old North Carolina 2A powerhouse a long time ago, at least. And I know Caleb Farley, who just got picked up by the Panthers practice squad. He played a couple years after me there, and definitely helped them forget my ever being there very quickly because he was the baller. But no, I grew up in a Christian home to parents that loved bringing us to church and loved App State football. And I've got an older sister, who's a couple years older than me. And within the family, just as the way that I grew up, I would say that my loves were football and myself. And the best way to describe, just seeing is I love to play the game, because I loved what it did for me, even from a very young age, 6th grade, just anything with a ball in my hands, just the kind of the accolade and the adoration behind it. And very much was able to get the small town head really, really quick. And whilst trying to do the whole church kid thing within the context of my family. And, as football began to take off, I don't think I could have articulated until after I was done playing. Or at least when I was in college, I could say I loved the game only for what it gave me, not because I loved football. I loved it while I was successful at it when I was in high school and stuff like that. But grew up in a great home. Grew up able to speak kind of my way around spiritual, religious matters growing up because I was around it all the time. But it wasn't until I was in college, like I said, playing ball at Charlotte, that I started to understand that my heart was not aligned with what I professed. Or right before I got to college, my heart wasn't aligned with what I professed. And I kind of started to have the desire be taken away just a little bit from a game and more towards, wanting to follow Jesus. And so God saved me when I was going into my senior year of high school, and then had a guy who was the chaplain at Charlotte start walking alongside me spiritually for the next 4 years. Named Ryan Glower. Great dude.
He's still there, right?
Yeah, he's still a chaplain. Yeah, there's another guy, Michael Salonik is the FCA guy there now. But those guys work together and have a great presence. So many people. I can think of countless people who are still kind of laboring and sowing seeds among athletes on that campus. That work that started when we were there is still definitely going on. But yeah, the best way I like to kind of lay out my own life is that it went from me just very infatuated with the things that I loved in myself to God kind of wrecking me the end of my high school career and me starting to kind of figure out what it looked like to walk a life where a game wasn't the most important thing, but something else was. So yeah, that's a little bit. I could go 20 different places there. So yeah,
That's awesome.
And you're married. You have 4 kids now.
Thank you for helping me get to where I am now. Ended up in that as I'm called away from football. I felt a call to ministry as I was leaving school. Had somebody tell me, do everything else that you can do unless you're called to ministry. And I tried that. I had like 5 different jobs. I was a wildlife officer for 3 days because I thought I wanted to be outside. But
say 3 days?
Yeah, I did not make it at all. I tapped out. Like I went from playing in the Alamo Dome in the end of November to like 4 weeks later in like boot camp. And I just perspective wise was like, I'm getting married in a month. I'm going to back up and punt. I'm not doing that. Had a few different odd jobs. Thankful to some people who just helped me get in. Ended up working maintenance at Hickory Grove, the church that I was going to at the time. And they ended up pulling me on the ministerial staff as I went into seminary. But when I was in college, and one of the most anchoring things that happened in my life was I met my wife, Bethany. And in that time of 5 different jobs, we were having our first of 4 kids. And so now we have Marcus, Ellie, Luna, and Eden, who was born just a couple of months ago. And I have the best 4 kids on the planet. And their dad is definitely still under development. But no, we are in Midland, North Carolina. Midland, North Carolina now. And
I thought it was Midland, so
yeah, not from the people that live here, which is Midland. And we've been there for about a year serving at Utah Baptist Church in New Salem, right just north tip of Marshall. And man,
I'm Randy Travis.
Yes, they had a festival recently. But I'm serving as a family pastor, getting to walk alongside parents as they raise their kids in a church that is a lot of parents and a lot of kids, and in a rural community. And so we absolutely love it here. It's been one of the, if not best thing that's happened to our families, being able to serve at this church and with these people. And so I've gone from football to that just being my entire life, is getting to kind of sow and weave our life into the local congregation. And so that's been just such a blessing for us and where we are now. So yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I want to unpack more things based off of your background. However, like Tucker said, we are a podcast that's helping men grow, but also we're kind of a football podcast too. So before we get too serious, I do want to unpack your football career at UNC Charlotte. Do you have a favorite memory of maybe a favorite win or a favorite time there while you're playing there?
Yeah, so that was a really hard one to narrow down. Personally, I think the moment I was the happiest moment that I had playing on the field is our freshman year. We went to Presbyterian because we were D1 AA schedule because we were operating as an independent in our first season, and we went to Presbyterian College. And
that's the Blue Hose, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we were. First off, none of the people we were playing and nobody really had lights on their field. So our games were done by 3:30 in the afternoon. When we were done, but we went and we'd been working, and I was still a meathead, throw the ball long, run real hard like that. I was not a quarterback mind, and wasn't too concerned about becoming one when I was playing because what I had done worked in my own mind. And I know now that probably wasn't the best approach to it. But we were playing, and I was working on reading defenses, and cover 0 is where they're sending everybody. I mean, it's devil coverage. It's 0 because you're not going to have the safety over top. And usually when you're on the 5-yard and in, people are going to be sending the house because the back of the end zone is their safety in their minds. And so we had worked for weeks and just trying to recognize defenses and know what to check. And we had quick slants checked into cover 0. And we were on the 3-yard line. We checked a quick slant. And you can see it on the tape when we played them. I throw the quick slant, caught for a touchdown. You're not supposed to lead them on the 3-yard line. You're supposed to throw it in their hip pocket and let them kind of fall into it and run to the sideline. Like I throw it and I'm already running to the sideline with my, trying to tell my coach, who was the greatest mentor in my life at that time. Just, I saw it. I was like, I saw zero. Epiphany moment for me that if I trust them enough, it's actually going to work out. That was a major moment for us, for me personally. And then for us, when we beat Marshall, my junior year at Marshall, and Coach Ratliff, our offensive line coach, had passed away in 2015, right before the season started, after he actually had a heart murmur and it was a drowning event and it was terrible. But right during camp before the season started, we go to Marshall. We beat Marshall towards the end of the game. I was not playing much at that time. I was just kind of sharing reps and being a kind of a bruiser running back type of thing. And just being in that locker room and seeing our reaction as a team to that win in the midst of a year that was just bad. It was a rough year for us. This actually may have been 2016, but either one. But that was a major moment for us as a team. It was a lot of fun, but difficult.
No, that's awesome. What do you? Sorry, real quick. What did your coach think when you went running to the sideline on that first story? Was he like happy, or was he like, get back on the? Like, what was he?
Awesome, because we had at that point in time, the quarterbacks coach was our offensive coordinator, and he was committed for those first 2 seasons to not being in the. He was like, I want to be on the sideline with you because we're doing hand signals and talking and stuff. And granted, some of the booths were not large enough for people to actually see matter much, but it made it to where like every high and every low of everything, like we just shared in the moment. And we would get back into tape on Sunday afternoon or Monday morning and unpack this stuff, and he would just rewind it over and over again. Be like, this is what I've told you. Like, you'll get to experience these things if you just listen to me. And,
that's cool.
I had impersonations of all our coaches. They're all gone now, but like we had a good time.
Dude, I forgot this about you. You have killer impersonations.
They're not practicing, but no, our little quarterback room went through so much. Lee McNeil's a pro forwarding scout for the Panthers now. And he was the best of us. We all in that room would say he was the best of us. But we built a bond over those couple of years that like I talked to him regularly, and it was just such a sweet time. Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm like, just as a football fan, I love sitting here listening to you talk about like inside the 5-yard line. You don't do this, you don't do that, cover zero, you got to have a check.
We're getting 90%.
I love the X's and O's. Yeah. So you, for those that don't know, you were the first, not just a quarterback at a D1 college football program, but you were the first ever quarterback at UNC Charlotte. It was a brand new football program. I remember all the hype around it. My mom and dad both went to UNCC, so they were my dad specifically was all excited that they were getting a football team. And I actually think we might have gone to a game and watched you play at that time. I don't remember, but there was a lot of hype around it. And so you walk into that situation and you have the normal pressures of being a quarterback on top of this being a brand new football program where it's really hard to build something from the ground up when you have all these other established college football programs. So for you in that time, what was that like? What are some of the lessons you learned through that experience, and how has that translated over into your life today and in your time in ministry?
Yeah. So what 25 of us got was only 25 guys got a scholarship, and 85 were walk-ons going into over 100-person camp. And so what that meant leading into our first season or first practice years, we practiced all of 2012 into 2013, was I don't know how we fit our heads in the building. You had 70-something freshmen and a bunch of guys who transferred in, and we all thought we were the greatest thing to hit the city of Charlotte. Like if there was anything I remember, it was constant turf war, constant flexing to try and be bigger and better than the next guy. Like all anyone had as far as clout to go on wasn't that they'd made it to a Duke, a Chapel Hill, an NC State, an Appalachia. It wasn't that we're going to fold into what's being done. It was just their own personality and how strong and big it could be. And so it was massive heads. None of us knew what we were doing. Our first day of running and conditioning, I was one of the 10 that vomited after the fourth 100-meter conditioning. And they just were like, everybody go back inside. We'll try this again next week. We're not going to have our first day be guys just vomiting on the sideline in the history of the program. And so that was our first time ever taking the field. And I remember really being able to be thankful that I was going to have a chance to play a lot, because that was one of the things they were selling some of the guys who were going to play a lot. I would be very thankful for that. Thankful that I was getting my education paid for. So it felt like that was very heavy on my shoulders. And my dad made sure that that was the case. But I do remember mourning the loss of having upperclassmen who played in a system prior to me. I would not, that was hard. I mean, coming in and you did not know how good you were until the end of the season. Pretty much. You couldn't assess what it was going to be like until you went into the game. And so we weren't going to know how we were going to play against an SEC team until I tried to run on 3rd and 3, and a safety from Kentucky made me sit down. Just sat me.
You're a big guy. You're a big dude.
That time. And I remember thinking to myself, we're down by forever in Lexington. Running the sideline, I'll never forget saying to a buddy of mine, I said, that is the hardest I have ever been hit in my life. There's a picture of I'm sitting.
SEC, it just means more.
Just means
you don't
more.
want to have a picture taken of you in a seated position on the floor. There's just not a good.
Awesome. You should get it framed and put it in your office.
That's in your house. Yeah.
Listen, the first few years after college, I went and got every digital image of me and tried to hold on to it as much as I can. Now I don't care as much, but it was one of those things when I wouldn't say I started having fun playing football until 2015, because playing and I think the great quarterbacks are the quarterbacks who are so tuned in and so focused on the excellence of the craft that they understood it was work when they were going into work. And I think I kept wanting my high school career to kind of continue into college, where I could just not coast, but just enjoy success based off of sheer athletic ability, and realizing the amount of work and technical strain that the first couple of years, we won games and we were so stressed out. Gardner-Webb, we came back and scored 4 touchdowns in the end of the fourth quarter in 2013. And I just remember being in my dorm hours later being like, thank God that's over.
Even though you won?
What? Yeah, even though we won. One of the greatest sporting events of my life. People still talk about it. I played great. I mean, just a dream of a moment. They stormed the field. Gardner-Webb was ranked. It was a big D1AA moment. And I just remember being so thankful that it was over. And I lived my life with that amount of stress for those first few years until I started getting some perspective.
I want to go back on that, is not only with football, but also with high school. I talked to people who were with grades. They were like, I didn't study at all in high school. And then I got to college, and then I had to, kick this into a different gear, because I realized that this is a lot harder. Not saying high school is not tough, but a lot of people coast in high school. And so do you think that football helped you out with a work ethic, and maybe a sense of I need to actually, if I care about this, I need to actually do something about this? Because I think Tucker was saying how these lessons transform into your life now. Has that has that transition helped you out with that at all?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of the lessons that were instilled in me were from our quarterbacks coach. Jeff Mullen he coached Geno Smith at West Virginia, Riley Skinner, before he ended up with us. But when I played, definitely football was my motivation to do good in anything, to allow that to continue to take place. And so, like I said, my greatest desire was for me to be great, and I was going to do all the things that were necessary to get that taken care of. But I was not a great mind. I'm not trying to be so self-deprecating. but I got through college because of ball. I got that paid for because of ball. My sister, she's the writer and the academic in the family, and so she went to school for free on her own merit. I went academic merit. I went for ball, and it was helpful to have some people in my life who constantly were making sure I was in the right frame of mindset to keep doing what I wanted to do. So yeah, I for people who are not good at school, you can be motivated by the right thing, and it can work out for you. But if you're a kid who is there are a lot of people that I saw that had nobody in their corner. No one checking on them, caring about where they ended up and what they did. And so I definitely felt the weight of that while I was walking through it.
Yeah, well, there were two things you said as you were describing your experience as a quarterback that are just in today's college football world seem like just out of sight, out of mind. But you said, A, your dad made sure you knew that getting a free education was super important, and how much that means, and it seems like that translated to you taking things pretty seriously and being really grateful for that. And then two, you said you wish you could have had upperclassmen who had been in the system and in a program to learn from. And I just feel like in college sports today, neither of those things matter to anybody anymore. It's just, let me go get a paycheck. I don't need to sit behind and learn. I just want to play. And who cares about the education? I just want to get paid. And it's like, I feel like it's hurting college sports as a whole, not just football.
Well,
so I appreciated you having that perspective.
Yeah, my dad, I got offered when I was going into my senior year of high school, full ride to play at Charlotte. My first offer, I accepted that offer 2 weeks after I got it. I had a lot of other letters and stuff going into my senior year, but what do people normally do? They lay the hats out on the table and they decide the night before signing day with the offers that they've got. And so, thinking back on it, if I wanted to go play at the biggest school, I had a senior year that made my junior year look terrible. I mean, I played better my senior year of high school that I could have, but I called people and said, don't offer me. I know where I'm going to school because my dad taught me, you dance with the one that brought you, that they wanted to invest. Not only do you want to go somewhere, they want you there. So that relationship extended way further, and it definitely colored how I did everything else. I think back now and I'm like, I met my wife at Charlotte. Like, no mistake was made in the in the filming of this life, right? No mistake was made during this time. God knew exactly what he was doing. But the other thing is, I don't think there was a mistake that was made when you made those decisions on principle rather than on what's going to be the best and most monetarily valuable thing in this moment. Because you can hurt a lot of people when that's the only thing driving. And I think that's what we're seeing in college football right now. You've got every decision being made based upon the thing that is the love of it is the root of all evil. And so, yes, it's entertaining, but at what point are we going to stop and look around and go, this probably developmentally and emotionally is a terrible thing to be excited about, for other people to get excited about. Keeping people from everything they could ever desire is sometimes more wise than not. And so I'm thankful every single day that Matt did not get his best laid plans, because there was something I couldn't. Man, Matt wouldn't have been good in the league. Matt wouldn't have been good at App State if I'd gone where I originally wanted to go. Like, it would have not been best for me. God knew what was best for Matt. And that was seen in the people, in the discipleship, in the relationships that came out of that, and who I am today.
Yeah, and Mike, you mentioned Carson Beck earlier. I'm not a big Carson Beck fan, okay? But like, I think I said this on the last podcast, but like, he drives a Lambo and our new quarterback drives an 84 F-150, I think that's kind of why I like Gunnar Stockton, because he, as from the outside looking in, he's not seem like he's looking for the fame, right? He's like, he actually cares about his team. And like the teammate said, like, this guy's a team player. And, with the college football right now, it's like, I mean, it's just all about how much money can I make, Well, like, I can play here, but if I go to that school, I can make like a couple $1 million. And it seemed like you were not there, you weren't there when, like, during the height of NIL. And so, like, your focus was, I'm getting a full ride. in order to keep this full ride, I need to make sure that my team is good. Not just me, my team is good, you know? And
Right.
so it seemed like you were a big team player. So did football teach you how to like be there for someone and how to be a team player? Because even though like if you're the quarterback, you're the leader, but you know, like there's no I in team. So
Right. I was of the thought that you never transfer out. That just was not. It didn't even cross my mind, which I think is hilarious. And now that I think back on it, I'm like, everyone just transfers when it doesn't go well. So
Right.
we did okay. I got hurt at the end of my sophomore year and was transitioning upward. We had a big quarterback competition going into our first Conference USA year. We go to the Georgia Dome. That's what I was going to say. The Georgia Dome, running into the Georgia Dome. But the year it got demolished.
yeah, but say no longer there.
Just looking up and realizing that when I played NFL 2K6, the one with Terrell Owens on the front of it, that I'm like, I'm under the roof, that when I would play as Michael Vick, I'm under that roof, you know, like I'm like, I just will never forget that. Now,
That's pretty surreal.
What ensued that day was the worst memory in college football. We won, but I turned the ball over 4 times. So we won our first Division I game against Georgia State. And that following week, I was no longer the starter. And so I like to tell the story that God was removing football to replace my, like, in my heart with things of Him. And what that allowed me to do was play football with my friends for the first time. Because when you're the quarterback, no one wants to talk to you. No one wants to mess you up. When you're doing great, most everybody's excited. When you're not, no one talks to you. So it was to the point that, like, I got to go be an H-back and a running back, and I got to be in rooms with guys that I had played football alongside, but really didn't get to know and enjoy playing with. And man, we struggled at that quarterback position for the rest of the time I was there. But man, the best memories that I have were kind of coming out of that and getting to play and be a teammate for the first time. And one of the biggest things that allowed me to do that was just not complaining, at least openly, about what was. I very much disagreed. I mean, I was obviously, you know, at times wanted to be the person that stormed off the field and threw his helmet and was frustrated. But I'm thankful that for some reason or another, God helped me keep a lid on it just so I could enjoy the 2 years I had there left. I don't think I squandered that time. So
Yeah.
a lesson anyway.
Yeah. And I'm so, because I know this is going to happen, so I'm like excited for when it does. I can't wait to hear the stories of guys that are playing college football right now in the middle of all the craziness, years down the road, who look back and say, you know, I probably shouldn't have transferred 3 times in 3 years. And
Right.
I probably shouldn't have made decisions based on money. I probably would have benefited from sticking through some adversity and working through it and learning how to deal with that. And I probably would have benefited from sitting behind someone else for a couple years and learn. Like, I know that's going to come eventually, because these guys are just dodging adversity, or not all of them, but some of them are transferring year after year after year because they're not getting playing time and they're not willing to stay and work through some adversity and figure out how to deal with it. And that, you know, you've said a lot of things that I think we can take and transfer over into our lives. And, you know, what you're just talking about, not complaining, at least not with the rest of the team, that carries over into real life. If you're at your job, and you may know someone like this, I've worked with people like this, they just walk around the office complaining all the time about anything and everything. Nothing the company does is good or right. They're going to have a problem with it. And all that does is it creates this negative, toxic environment, and it tempts other people to do the same. And then it slowly starts to sink the ship. But instead, if you can have emotional regulation and be able to, like you're talking about, be able to kind of keep that stuff and deal with it internally and with your closest people to where it doesn't impact the team, that's a powerful thing. And you're doing a good thing for the people around you. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of life lessons being missed out on in today's college football world. Just
You
because
don't have to learn it.
Yeah.
You don't have to learn them anymore. You can just, you can kind of run from it. And I'm thankful people wouldn't allow me to run from it. So.
Yeah. Well, and you've mentioned that a couple of times. You said you really had people in your corner. Would you mind we talk every week on this podcast about the importance of having close, deep friendships and having good voices and people in your life. How important has that been for you, not only when you were playing ball and in high school, but even now in your life today? What does that look like for you? How much do you value that? How do you prioritize it? How important are those friendships and mentorships in your life?
Right. So I don't, there's no lasting change in a person without another person. If you've not read, the book is, I might have it in front of me right here. I don't. The author, Justin Whitmell Early, he wrote Habits of the Household, and then he's got another book. I will find it and text it to you guys, on what the biblical friendships look like and the heart behind it. Actually going down to like writing out a covenant of friendship, which I've not done yet, but just that heart behind that is so important to me. But I had guys, the reason that we even served on staff together, Tucker, at the church that we were at, was because when I was a knucklehead as a freshman, still waiting to find my church, Zach Bumgarner, who played at St. Stephen's in Catawba County, was my roommate. And he woke me up one Sunday and was like, "We're going to church. Get dressed." And, he was a kind of a kickstart to me walking the way that I needed to be walking. And then I'll never forget, at my wedding, in the rehearsal dinner, he said to my mom, and her name's Angelica, he goes, "Angelica, you took care of him for 18 years. I took care of him for 4.5. And he looked at my wife. He was like, "Bethany, it's your turn."
That's awesome.
Very much had his hand in my life when I was, oftentimes when I just wouldn't even necessarily see the importance of it. We had a group of guys I lived with in college that very much saw it as our responsibility to say, so-and-so's not home yet. Should we call them? Let's go. Let's just at least find out where they are, And now looking back on it, I see that as really weird. That people like to live, especially if you're somebody that will run from a relationship or you're used to being a loner. I would just say that the absence of those phone calls speak a lot louder over the years than the annoyance of having somebody who desires to be in your life. And so I had a really tight group of guys that if football would have ended, those relationships wouldn't have ended. They transcend so much more than just a game, to the point that it's transcended our life after football. I mean, we still communicate and talk and encourage one another, even if it's just a text every now and again. But we've seen the guys that don't have that, how negative that's affected their life. And then I had a coach who felt like it was his job to take care of me, in Coach Mullen. And I had a guy spiritually who was discipling me in my church. And then seeing that modeled in my own life made it to where I wanted to have that all the time with people. And so now, some of the guys that I served on the maintenance staff with at my church, we go on a hunting trip every single year. We just got back a couple days ago. And that's one of the activities that I do that kind of has replaced, football. But those trips are spirit-filled trips, encouraging trips. They're life catch-up, it is not having that would be, especially the weight of the world being on a father's shoulders and all of the different pressures. I mean, think about just inflation. What are we going to do politically as a country? What are we going to do? How am I supposed to love the woman that God has placed in my life? How am I supposed to do that well and without sin? Like, what does this look like? And all of not doing that in a vacuum is the way that celebrity pastors and celebrities in general wind up squandering it all. And so I am greatly thankful that I'm not left to my own devices, because there's a lot of people involved in that.
I wrote down something you said, and I don't know if this is you. You said there's no lasting change in a person without another person. I love that quote. Like, I was actually on the phone with a buddy yesterday. He was talking about marriage, and I was like, there's this stereotypical quote that don't find someone that's going to change you. And I said, now obviously you want to be who you are, but you should find someone in a wife who's going to make you better, who is going to hold you to better. And that can also be as a friendship too. And so I love, you need people in your life. You need as we said in this podcast, a dog in your life that's going to make a lasting change and you to become a better person. So I love that. And then also the whole coaching thing, I've witnessed some bad coaching, and I as a player, and as a coach, and I've witnessed some bad coaching, and I don't think coaches realize the negative effect they can have on somebody because like they think that they're out there by themselves, but they have no idea the eye's watching them. And it sounds like not only did you have really good teammates, but you had a really good coach too. And that's taught you not only how to be a man, but also how to be a mentor as well.
Right.
So that's super cool.
I've been in situations too where obviously like you need to be vulnerable around the right people, correct? That's just not for everybody. But I've been in situations and been led in situations where vulnerability is the enemy and you just need to grit your teeth and get after it. And, that's a really good podcast, and it looks amazing as a weightlifting instructor video, but like not in real situations in the way that we operate with people who are also flawed. And so going from, I've been in situations where that's taken its toll, especially in tandem with the reality that I had a coach tell me one time. Very thankful for this. You guys had a guy on one of your podcasts, I think it was the leadership one, talk through that there is that it's always your fault. You should take responsibility. That is amazing. I had a coach one time say, hey, I'm going to up down you for the next 10 minutes. You didn't do anything wrong, but we're going to build some capital with everybody else to show that you're a team player no matter what. So I just want you to up down and don't complain. I'm going to make you throw up. Like, it's going to be really bad, but I want you to know I love you and you've done nothing wrong, but you're going to show people that you've done something wrong. And so like, that's a great reality until you put that in a context where you're so self-deprecating that you're not talking about reality anymore. But yeah, the fact that I had leaders in my life who were willing to be vulnerable made it to where I felt like I could. And I have so much more respect for somebody who can point out their shortcomings to an extent to lead rather than to hide them for whatever veneer they have. But yeah, Made for People is the Justin Whitmel book. And then I think the quote, no lasting change, comes from that book. That is from the book Groups, and it's a discipleship book group that came out this past year. It's just called Groups. So anyways, sorry.
No, I love that.
No, you're good. And I love what you just said, like having leaders that are vulnerable and honest breeds more of that. And it gives people the freedom to do it. And, we've talked about on this podcast before that all of us are leaders, whether we want to accept that responsibility or not. There are always people looking up to us as not just because we're men, but as men, there's always somebody looking up to you and who views you as a leader. And I feel like there's just certain contexts where as men, we feel like we can't be vulnerable. We can't talk about, what we're struggling with or areas we need to improve because we feel like the weight of the world is on our shoulders. Like as a dad, I'm sure you feel that. Yeah. And as a pastor, I'm sure you feel that. And once I decided in ministry that I was no longer gonna button up my shirt, try and act like I got it all together, it's been so free. Like I'm in a much healthier place in ministry this time around than I was before because I've just decided I'm gonna put it all out there. Not everything, right? There's a fine line, but like when it's appropriate, I'm gonna be authentic and honest about areas I can improve and get better in because I'm no different than anybody else. I think Dan said when he was on the podcast, which this makes 3 weeks in a row that we're still quoting Dan, but I think he said, we're all just doing life together. And that's so like we love to get on a high horse or put ourselves on a pedestal and think that like we got to be this big bad dude or whatever. And that's part of the issue I have with some of the self-help motivation stuff is they act like they make no mistakes and that they're always attaining and reaching their goals. And I'm like, that's just not realistic. I do not buy that for a second. And so I would rather say, hey, I'm shooting really high for this thing and I believe I can attain it. Right. But along the way, if I start to slip or I start to fail, I want to talk about that because in talking about it with Johnny or one of my other friends, they can maybe help me find a solution to get back on track. But if I never talk about it and I just keep acting like I'm knocking it out of the park and hitting home runs, who does that help? Who does that benefit? Nobody.
Right. What is it? The Tim Keller, The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness is a little 90-page book. And he talks about the inflated ego and the deflated ego. And the inflated ego is an organ that shouldn't be inflated. And then if it's deflated, that's also bad. So we have this over confident view of ourselves and potential of getting popped. And then we have a deflated view of ourselves that's not providing us with the right nutritions. And the thing that I felt like that I had to figure out, because the weight of parenting and the weight of whatever it is you're going through in life is a circumstance, but they are not all the result of your good or bad behavior. Some of them are just happening to you. And so one of the things that I got to parse out just through some counseling I've been through in the last couple of years has been that this is happening to you. You're allowed to lament and you're allowed to deal with frustration, but it is not helpful to think that it is solely up to you whether it figures itself out or not. It might just be your lot, you know? So being able to walk through that and allow for bad things to take place in our lives, which we talked about earlier, no one's allowing for that to happen anymore, is one of the best teachers and one of the best things to be able to walk through people's life with. And so I think ministry is one of the worst places where pastors oftentimes don't get to deal with the fact that something may be difficult and definitely don't share it with somebody else. And so it's been great to serve at a place where I serve now. It's been great to serve at a place that the worst possible things and the best possible things could happen to me in my life. And I would want to be right here with these people, with some of the guys that I'm with, for those things to take place.
Yeah. And that's such a powerful mindset to have. And you know, Paul says godliness with contentment is great gain. And that to me, I know I'm trashing on self-help motivational stuff. That to me is where the biggest gap is with I've read a lot of those books. I've listened to a lot of those guys, is that it's always, you can have more, you can be more, you need to do more. You need to keep leveling up. And there's no space for contentment in it. It's like, I always got to be working towards the next thing. I always have something I need to improve, which, like, yes, to an extent, we should want to improve. We should want to get better, but there has to be a space for, you know what? I'm thankful for where I'm at. And I have a lot of good things in my life. And yeah, there's circumstances that have happened to me this year that have been really difficult, but they help me learn, they help me grow. And it sounds like that's what you're sharing. And, you know, as a podcast, we are not out here trying to be the next self-help motivation guru. What we want to be is, hey, we're just like you trying to figure this out. As you listening to this podcast, we are one of you. We're in the same seat you are in. We're not experts. We're not, you know, gurus in any specific field. We're just out here trying to figure it out and sharing what we learn along the way and giving people like Matt a space to share their story as well. And we learn from it when we have guests on the podcast. So Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on.
Thank you.
I enjoyed so much hearing you relive your football days. So I appreciate you.
Thanks, man. This was awesome.
Rewinding the clock.
Anytime.
Yeah. Johnny, any last thoughts from you?
Hey, Matt, I'm glad that we're friends now, but next season when UNC plays Georgia, we'll see what happens.
Listen, I'll Venmo you for the tickets, and then at least get to sit next to each other.
Yes. But if y'all score, if y'all score in the first 2 minutes, I'm leaving the game.
And that's so normal. It's so normal.
I know.
UMass did that to you guys this year. So.
Hey, okay. We're not on a Georgia hate group right now. Let's pump the brakes. Goodness gracious.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you again. Johnny, sorry about your Bulldogs. At least we're in the same boat now.
We're in the same boat.
We can mold them together.
Yeah.
We can share our burdens, Johnny.
Yes, and the SEC still means more. So let's stop the hate with the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, they just didn't even give it 24 hours. They didn't even give it 24 hours, and they were already dancing on the SEC's grave.
Yeah. They hate us because they hate us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, if you're listening, be like Matt. Go be a dog today.
And be like Matt and go be there for your dogs.